One thing that really sucks about being a fan is remaining at the whim of large corporate entities that don't always have your best interest in mind. Welcome back to OtakuDaiKun. Dai here. Today I want to talk about something I don't really think has a solution. It's the relationship between companies that produce content and the fans that consume it. It's a bizarre dynamic that can be approached from so many angles that I feel it's important to talk about and, hopefully, find a way through which fans can effectively communicate with the creators of the works they love. Right from the get-go, it's an odd setup. A creator puts something out there, then people evaluate it, and a handful of them become fans. A lot of times, fans bring forth expectations or desires that may influence a creator's works. Satisfying these fans can ensure a stable audience, but their demands may not align with the creator's passion or inspiration. Thus, the creator is forced to choose between pursuing their dreams and shilling out for money's sake. Then you employ various creators under financially motivated companies, trying to build a successful brand, and the gap between a creator and their fans becomes tainted by layers of red tape. It raises so many questions. From our end as fans, it's odd because we function through consumption. We're always on the lookout for things to entertain us, and we typically see creators as a source of consistency. We may like an artist for the way they draw, or a film director for their ambitious storytelling. The huge advantage behind established names and works is that fans know what to expect, and can repeatedly support them until their ideas become old and stale. The true dream for a creator is to have their fans support them as they continue to explore and experiment without limits. But when money is involved, the relationship needs to remain transactional. Fans fork out money because they want quality content, and oftentimes it's the power of their dollar that determines what content is considered valuable. Yet, this process is always post-creation. A creator must first put out content to be evaluated, so it can be difficult to know what's in demand before a work is made. By that same token, not everyone likes the same things, and it's not always easy to properly deliver niche content to the people who will cherish it most. The Fate series is a wonderful example of this. Type Moon's new BB studio recently announced a remake of the original Fate Extra game on PSP. This new title, Fate Extra Record, looks amazing, and I very much want to play it. To make the game accessible to me, however, it'll need to be translated into English in an uncensored state. Standing here now, I legit wonder how I, as an international buyer, can effectively express my desire for an English release. One big question on my mind is, who will be the one to handle the localization? Thankfully, it seems that Aniplex is the prime contender, being the current studio behind localizing Fate Grand Order, as well as the new Emiya family cooking game. That said, the franchise has seen a number of companies handle its works over the years. To this day, neither the original Fate Stay Night visual novel nor its sequel Hollow Ataraxia have been officially localized. I honestly don't know why. Even now, Stay Night is considered one of the absolute best visual novels, and plenty of other less popular visual novels have gotten localized even after receiving solid fan translations. I'd love to know which companies have considered translating it, and the reasons they didn't. It'd also be good to know why, even as Fate is exploding worldwide, Type Moon isn't interested in bringing the novel's current release overseas. As such, the first Fate work to be localized was the 2006 anime by Studio Dean. Localization was handled by the now out-of-business Geneon USA. The show was localized first, likely because, at the time, visual novels weren't that popular in the West, and the anime had significantly less text to translate. Later on, Axis Games localized the original Fate Extra during the booming popularity of the PSP. To be honest, I don't know what factors went into them picking up Extra, but circumstances certainly changed by the time Extra CCC came around. I remember begging them to pick the game up, but they never did. Perhaps it was because the PSP was on its last leg, the game had substantially more fan service, or simply the fact that the first game didn't sell well. Either way, this left the West without Fate until Zero and Unlimited Blade Works released through Aniplex, but they didn't do much with gaming at the time. Because of this, I was overjoyed when Xseed picked up the license to Fate Extella and its sequel Extella Link. I remember begging them on social media to consider the game, as it was being produced by the same folks that did Senran Kagura, which Xseed also localizes. It was a dream come true, but in retrospect, Xseed only did it because they had become the North American subsidiary of Marvelous. In other words, we got lucky. Games aren't always localized because they deserve it. Sometimes they're prioritized through corporate networking. As a result, Xseed stepped down from localizing the various Falcom titles they've been known for, such as Ys and Trails in the Sky. Luckily, NIS America took up that banner, though they're far, far from perfect. Obviously, this meant that Xseed's connection with Fate extended as far as Marvelous's involvement, leaving games like Fate Grand Order to rot for 2 entire years. Now, you would think that, considering FGO is fairly consistently rated top mobile game in Japan, that Type Moon would have wanted to bring it overseas ages ago. However, it took some convincing. Basically, staff went overseas to attend conventions and noticed people cosplaying characters that were never officially made available outside Japan. They realized how many people were playing their game even without localization, and reasoned there was a substantial market. Now that Aniplex localizes games, the deed is done. Thanks to this, so long as Type Moon continues to work with Aniplex, we should continue to get English translations of their works. This is great, but we can never let our guard down. Hearing that the Emiya family game is getting localized was still an unexpected surprise. After all, the show it's based on has yet to see an international Blu-ray release. Personally, these are concerns I'd bring up within 10 seconds of speaking to any Aniplex staff, but oftentimes these decisions are made so far in advance, and companies are so strict with non-disclosure agreements, that getting a straight, honest answer out of anyone is next to impossible. I could spend months begging a company to license a certain show or game, only to eventually find that they'd long since decided whether to pick it up or let it go, and they just couldn't let me know of their decision until they had prepared their own official statement. This is one of the major problems we as fans have communicating with creators. Companies are often too unapproachable. Obviously, companies are made up of hundreds of employees, but we still tend to either personify them as a single entity or see them as synonymous with their executives or CEO. In many ways, this is fair, since the higher-ups are the ones making actual decisions, but the truth seems to be that things are always more complex than we'd expect. Sometimes the people within a company don't even know what the hell is going on. Heck, even if they do know, they might be forbidden from telling you. Even if you manage to snag an interview with the company's CEO, you'd be lucky to get anything more than pre-established corporate speech. PR-approved lines designed to be safe by saying as little as possible. Due to this, our efforts to reach out to companies often fall on deaf ears. Is anyone important in a company ever reading its own Twitter handle? Is there any guarantee that my emails or messages will actually reach who they're intended for? At the same time, would I really want them to be following Twitter that closely? After all, how does a creator actually identify their own fans? We anime fans often tend to argue that companies shouldn't cave to SJWs because they'll never be satisfied and have no intention of buying the product to begin with. But how can a company know that? They can see sales figures, but aren't necessarily able to tell if those sales are coming because they chose to censor a work or not. We have the phrase "go woke, go broke" for a good reason, but it doesn't always work out that way. It's quite possible that when controversy emerges about a game's censorship, it ultimately serves as effective PR either way. Sometimes just getting your product in the public consciousness is more important than the reason why. While it's valuable feedback for people to post their canceled pre-orders or express their disinterest in a project, these actions don't inherently translate into convincing statistics. For instance, despite the strong effort from fans to get Bandai Namco to release an HD collection of the Xenosaga games, nothing fans have done proved to be convincing. This is why petitions hardly do shit. Even if you manage to get a couple thousand fans to sign a petition to show their collective interest, that number always pales in comparison to actual sales figures. That, and it's a lot easier to ask for something than it is to invest in it. There's absolutely no guarantee all those signatures will translate to buyers. This makes voting with your wallet difficult. If you boycott a game, how does that look any different than just not being interested in the product in the first place? Companies don't get a printout of all the sales they could have gotten had they released an uncensored version. The closest measurable stat we have these days is when a company releases a game on more than one platform, one of which being censored while the others aren't. You'd expect the uncensored version to sell more, but that might not always be the case. It's still possible the censored version outsells the others because it's on a more popular console, and this kind of data will only reinforce the company's view that censorship was the right choice, even when that's not the case at all. Essentially, companies can wind up completely ignorant of their own fans, forced to see them through numbers rather than through polls, interviews, and other more personalized means. Yet, can we blame them? Do fans actually know what they want? Are we lying to ourselves? People can whine and complain all they want about shows like Sword Art Online and shonen like Naruto, but those series remain on headlines because they continually drag in views and revenue. While I'd prefer a quality show like Violet Evergarden over Naruto at every opportunity, does that really matter so long as Naruto continues to rake in more profits? Comparatively, Naruto seems cheaper to produce and has a wider audience. This makes things very difficult. I've personally experienced this as a YouTuber. By far, the easiest to make, most viewed videos on my channel tend to be Fate memes. Not to insult anyone who likes them, I love them personally, but they're kinda the junk food of my channel. And I'm pretty sure my most vocal viewers would be disappointed if I dropped my lore vids in favor of more trendy content. But what if I did do that? For all I know, my channel could grow hundreds of times larger and faster by resorting to memes and videos that demand less effort. Of course, I won't do that. Not exclusively anyway, because I love creating compelling content. As long as my lore vids can pay the bills, I'll keep making them. Still, I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel pressure to put aside my interest in favor of chasing the algorithm. At the same time, I wouldn't want y'all to just blindly praise everything I make if you aren't happy with it. I just mean to say that creators have both qualitative and quantitative measurements to consider when making a choice, and sometimes the two forms of data don't match up. Let's look at some examples of how companies navigate such mixed signals, either managing to please or upset their fans in the process. For instance, the Super Smash Bros. Games thrive off their fan service. Not necessarily the sexy kind, but the kind that tries to give fans what they want, and yet, it's a monumental task. How does Sakurai and his team decide on who should be the next character to add to the roster? Originally, they held a vote. I remember submitting entries for Xenoblade's Fiora, Shantae, and of course Artoria. All of them had been on Nintendo consoles to an extent, and Artoria was even included in Brawl through mods, so she was a proven concept. Not that I expected these to win a popularity contest, though. The top contenders seemed to be iconic characters like Crash Bandicoot, Goku, and Sora from Kingdom Hearts. So when Nintendo revealed the winner to be Bayonetta, I felt cheated. Of all the characters that could be in a Smash game, am I really to believe that the vast majority actually voted for Bayonetta? I've got nothing against the character, but there's just no way she was legit at the top of that list. Rather, I'm sure Nintendo placed a lot of unwritten standards on what options they considered feasible, and eliminated the top spots until they found one that they felt was appropriate. Perhaps the rights to Sora and Goku were too costly or inaccessible to obtain. Personally, I think Nintendo wanted a character that would fit the company's current promotions and branding. In a sense, Smash characters are often used to advertise other franchises. Considering Bayonetta had made the jump to Nintendo consoles just a year prior to the vote, I'm sure Nintendo saw her as a viable option to sell not just the character, but more of her affiliated game. Plus, she may have been relatively inexpensive to obtain. In other words, there were various business factors that greatly influenced Nintendo's decision, rendering the vote itself more of a source of suggestion than an actual contest. This trend continued for the roster of Smash Ultimate, which added characters that had clear financial incentives to do so. Joker, for instance, while never having been on a Nintendo console, was likely added in tandem with arrangements for Persona 5 Scramble. Of course, Smash also continued to add various Fire Emblem characters to promote each new release. Even though hardcore Smash fans had enough of these characters, Byleth was still released, no doubt to promote Three Houses. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. Byleth is insanely hot after all. But when it comes to company decisions, player demand isn't always the most determining factor. In many ways, this matches my experience working warehouse and retail. There was an algorithm to decide which items were shipped to my store, and it didn't necessarily have anything to do with which products were running low on shelves. Rather, our shipments primarily consisted of items the company had brand deals and sales to promote, resulting in us getting so much of a certain product that we'd have to backstock it in the warehouse in preparation for the sale. This had an odd effect on buyers, creating this illusion that what was bulked out on the sales floor was more coveted and valuable, when in reality these items were just what the company most wanted to sell. This is how brands stay alive. Rather than giving you what you truly want, they try to convince you that what they release is truly what's desired, which is pretty deceitful. Why else would Nintendo reveal Piranha Plant for Smash instead of the highly requested Waluigi? It came off as a huge troll, insulting the fans who legit wanted more wah in their lives. In actuality, the plan's inclusion could have been more of the devs really wanting it, or maybe it was such a simple character that it was a quick way to fill the roster. Fans also wanted more Xenoblade 2 in the game, only to be told the game was too recent for the devs to include much of it. This would be reasonable, but they never helped give us an understanding of how long it actually takes to make these characters. On the other hand, we have Fate Grand Order, which after months of people begging, finally revealed a summer variant for Okita. Considering how long it takes to make content for the game, I'm sure Type Moon had swimsuit Okita in the works for some time before they wanted to officially reveal her. This makes me wonder how much fan feedback really had anything to do with it. It's possible all our requests were nothing more than validating a decision Type Moon had already made. As frustrating as this is, I can't think of a better solution. Can we stop SJWs from voicing their complaints? Not without violating free speech. can we convince companies not to listen to them? It's certainly not easy. Still, if we don't voice our own desires and concerns, if we don't celebrate the things we love, if we don't build hype for announcements we approve of, and if we don't bare our souls to these companies, we won't even stand a chance. So, continue to be a fan, continue to have a voice, and strive to make that voice heard among the crowds of whining haters you wish would just shut up. And yeah, if there's anything to definitely take from this video, it's that Fate Extra Record simply has to be released in English. Anything less would be a travesty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this channel, help me beat the algorithm by liking, commenting, and sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and, most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of my anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content. If you want to support me directly, there are now 3 ways that all provide the same benefits. You can click Join here on YouTube, or join Patreon or Subscribestar for access to exclusive vids and early access. As always, celebrate your fandom.